Okay, let's try this again. Hi, this is being made for a friend who just wanted to see my process in drawing. The whole concept for this one was Amy in a winter fit. Although when I came into it, I was just like, I'm gonna draw Amy, right? I'm just drawing the quills here. Um, I'll try to be insightful. The main thing that you'll see is a focus on contour, a focus on drawing the right line the first time through, basically. Um, this one I actually did do another pass of line work for, but a lot of the time I will not do that. I'll just clean up the sketch. You'll see here, right away I was quite like, right away I was quite like, this isn't quite the right shape. It was almost more like Dracula-esque or something. It was like a popped collar, so I went for like the more like kind of folded collar look. Um, the whole idea behind this, and I will color it, and there will be a video of that too, is her looking out at the snow, all whimsical and shit, all magical. Um, and you'll see that come to pass over time. You'll notice more than anything, uh, and this is true whenever I have to draw these fucking rats front facing, is the muzzle, the eye shape. A lot of iterating. You'll notice that I don't know if I'd call it a struggle, but it's something that I always have to iterate on quite a bit before I get it quite to my liking. It was way worse back in the day when I was still trying to figure these fuckers out. Um, Now I think generally I have a pretty good grasp of drawing Sonic characters. Every now and then it can give me a hard time still. The muzzle, especially, is something that um, I really have to work on and get my memory banks moving to get the right shape that I want. Because if if you're well versed in the way these characters have looked over the years, the muzzle shape in particular, Twitter freaked out about this like a few months ago, where people were like getting really anal about this. But muzzle shape from iteration to iteration of Sonic designs is really different. Um, and there's ways in which I like it. There's ways in which I don't. The way the muzzle's drawn right now, um, it's kind of my default. It's really reminiscent of how it looks um, in the Sonic CD intro, right? A Toei Sonic, a Gucci Sonic, whatever you want to call it. That kind of look. And that's kind of just the default, right? Like I said. Right here, I'm starting to work on the turtleneck, getting the right shape to, establish like the implication of the neck and stuff. Um, and a lot of what's going on here, it's just intuition at this point. Oh, yeah. The sometimes that'll happen. Um, when I'm selecting stuff. Uh, I decided to resize it a bit just to get her more in frame, be more part of the picture. And here is where I was like, okay, the eyes aren't working. I gotta do something about it. So I decided to make her look up. Um, and it will come to a point even later where she's looking even higher up. But right now, that's where I leave it for quite a while. I was trying to get a feel for the expression I wanted. I wasn't too sure about this. The smile, like the blink smile, just wasn't working. She looked kind of lifeless. Something that honestly, yeah, I think the final drawing, the face could have been a bit more emotive, and maybe I'll iterate on it before I do the colors. There's a few things that I need to add to the drawing before I do that. Right here, the ears, very Toei Sonic, very round-ish. While not being complete bear ears, they're kind of bear ears. Um, this one I just put down the way that it was like conform to the head just wasn't right. That's something you got to really pay attention to when you're drawing furry designs in general, is the way that these like really long ears conform to the shape of the head. A good rule of thumb for like Sonic characters, at least, is the ears. You want them to line up with the top arc of like the eye mask on each side. Especially even if it's a 3/4 view, the eye that's like most visible, your ear is gonna want to be a certain distance towards it, and you gotta like really look at the official art to get a feel for that, and you want it to be lined up a certain way. This is where I started iterating on the muzzle more. When I established that there was this like upwards look, and I also changed, so like a big thing that defines what the muzzle will look like. This is a scarf I'm adding. Is kind of its relationship to the eye mask. So, for example, like it was before with Toei, that line that is connected to like the eye mask on each side, it's going to be kind of flat, and it's going to kind of almost jut out when it like goes past the eye and is connected to the rest of the head. It's going to kind of jut out almost. Whereas if you look at a lot of modern Sonic designs, in 2D specifically, not necessarily 3D, most of the models are really bad. They need to update that shit, but I digress. You want the muzzle for a lot of like modern 2D designs, and even some classic 2D designs, to conform, towards like the eye mask, right? I'm not sure if I'm explaining it quite a way. You kind of want it to almost go in a manner of speaking. And as far as the lines at the bottom on each side, not the bottom of the eye mask, or not the bottom of the muzzle, but kind of the top of the muzzle, on the two ends that lead to the hump, you want that curve. You kind of want to think of the eye mask and the muzzle, in that portion of it, to be one and the same, to kind of imply an eye shape. So what's really cool about the Toei muzzle shape, right, the Toei Sonic muzzle shape, the CD Sonic muzzle shape, is it's kind of Dragon Ball-y. It kind of implies an eye shape that's like similar to Dragon Ball, and that makes a lot of sense because they worked on that shit, right? Where the bottom of the eyes there are kind of just a straight line. Sometimes they'll even curve like inwards, but at most they will, or at the very least, they'll be kind of a straight line almost, in some Dragon Ball designs, and that's kind of what you see with the Toei Sonic muzzle. But here you get like a curve that goes downwards, to imply a big wide-eyed look. And that's what I ended up going for with this one, because it's supposed to look kind of cutesy. It's supposed to look, kind of soft. Right here, I kind of made a weird choice, and I don't think I'd make the choice again. I gave her her ring, her bracelet. That's, it's like the normal Amy look. I didn't give it to her on her neck, but I did give it to her on her hand. And I don't know if I would do that again, because I also wanted the coat to have sleeves, obviously. And I kind of just gave it the ring, and then at the bottom I just did like the cuff of the sleeve, and then, gave you that little poof, that little round, that curved shape that goes into the rest of the sleeve. I probably would just give her the cuff, right? I probably wouldn't do the ring again. It's not much to say. I'm just iterating on the muzzle a little bit more to kind of get the appeal I want. That's kind of what you have to think about generally when drawing more than anything, in my opinion, at least in my school of thought, is contours everything. The feel of a line, the thickness of a line, how the thickness of a line implies line shape, the direction of the line, the flow of it. The big cheat code that I tell everybody, the big cheat code that really woke me up, I think, and you don't need to do this forever. There's a value to having a brush that is, kind of stock in terms of its minimum width, where the pressure truly determines exactly how thin and how thick your line is going to be. But when I realized the power, you're going to see me have to work on this a lot of Control Z's. That's kind of the name of the game. A brush, and I ended up working with this. A minimum line width is magic. It's a cheat code that gives you access to a lot of consistency. Because what I see a lot of artists that are still trying to figure this whole line art thing out is you'll see lines taper off in ways that aren't really very appealing. And I think part of why that is because they're using a brush that has no minimum line width. And they don't really know, it's not even that they don't know, it's just that they stick with it. Because maybe in their mind, I can't exactly elaborate on why, but it is a thing I notice, and it's a problem I had in the past too. I'm speaking from experience, where I would let that line be tapered off, even though there really wasn't any good reason for it to. Because a minimum line width will allow you to make the line thicker if you want to, but those really thin lines that you work with aren't going to run the risk of being strangely tapered off unless you're making a really big piece, which in that case you definitely want a brush that will be able to adapt in size. The brush I use is I've always shorthanded it as a mechanical pencil brush, because that's what the guy who I stole it off of on DeviantArt called it. But I've seen it described as almost like a crayon. And yeah, and what's really cool about crayons is when you look at a crayon, the tip of it is flat. A crayon has a minimum line width. It's of course possible to make the line thinner if you tilt it slightly and work off of those round edges. But if you place the crayon flat down on the paper, it will be the consistent size every single time. And, it's also that kind of texture as well. But I think that's kind of a defining piece of it is, there's a bit of chunkiness to it when you put it down on paper. And I like that. I like it a lot. It's really nice. And again, once I started using this brush and I felt the magic of a minimum line width, I can never really go back. And I work in 4x3 these days. One, because I'm, a pretentious fuck. And two, because I just found that this brush really worked well in this canvas size with 300 dpi specifically, where just a difference of 1 pixel in size completely changed the feel of the brush. It completely changed what the brush was doing. So I have a lot of variation in how I get to use this one brush, and it's basically all I use. I use a stock default brush for coloring, but as far as sketching, as far as lining, it's all the one brush. At least in Psy. When I very rarely use CSP, I experiment a lot more with different brushes. But Psy and this brush is my bread and butter. I haven't really found any way to replicate this brush ideally in any other program, not even Psy 2. So I stick with Psy 1. One thing you might notice that I've been doing with all of these lines so far in the line work phase, something I don't do often, but I did do for this one, is I'll draw over the line, and I'll leave this like separation. In my head, I call it doubling up, and I'll do different things depending on lines. Like this one, like the turtleneck, I did it a lot closer, and I did it a good bit thicker. But this is something that kind of clicked in my head after a while of using this brush, that and studying other artists, of course, is that there's this appeal. There's something about, and I can't really quite explain why, but there's something really appealing about basically drawing the line twice and having that little bit of separation. It implies a lot of depth and texture and gives it a clean yet sketchy look that really elevates. And I've always been a huge proponent of a sketchy style. I've always wanted to try and achieve that, but I've also been, through the influence of my teachers, I am largely self-taught. I don't mean teachers in an academic sense, but my peers, those above me, those better than me that I learned from. The value of clean lines, and also the frustration of not being able to know what to do with extremely sketchy sketches after I had made them and I wanted to elaborate on them further. That's part of what made the line art process so infuriating for me personally, was my sketches were too rough. I really liked what they were doing. I really liked the things that I implied, but I wasn't able to iterate. I wasn't able to manifest them into something more refined. So it kind of led me down this journey of getting way, way better at contours over time, while still wanting to retain that sketchy look. And when I found this brush, it was like a heaven. It completely, I'm not going to say fast-forwarded, but it definitely elevated me based off of those ideals that I had been carrying in, and those frustrations that I wanted to be rid of. And so it led to this point where now, like I said, I rarely ever do line work anymore, because I kind of just go about doing drawing as doing the line right the first, second, third time, and just Control-Zing if I wasn't happy with what I was looking at. And it kind of developed even further, and you can see this in some of my drawings, into, I don't really know how else to describe it, but, like painting with lines, where I constantly iterate and iterate and iterate and iterate on this sketch over time, with things like hatching and, again, contours and stuff. A lot of hatching. Wanted to make the eyes really shining and bubbly. I did this. I haven't done like the that kind of like highlight on the eye in a long time, actually. I was like, there's something about this that's not working. I need to add something. So I tried that, and it like worked like a dream. So I'm pretty happy with the eyes. You'll notice I added a lot more thickness to the bottom. That's a Yuji Uekawa thing. You'll find if you look at like the Sonic Adventure 1, Sonic Adventure 2 key art that Uekawa did, where he would add a lot of thickness to the bottom of the eyes and then leave the sides of them thin. And it's not something I typically do, but with Sonic characters I do it. It just looks nice. I don't know. More duration on the muzzle. The line was like way too thin. I needed some texture, some weight. And iterating on the hump as well. The difficult part when initially doing, and I'm gonna add blush here as well. The initially difficult part with doing a sonic muzzle is just creating the shape and making it look natural, making it look correct based off of the angle, based off of the proportion, the way the head's tilted, all of that stuff. And then the really difficult part of doing the muzzle later on is getting that goddamn hump to not look stupid. That's basically it. Because once you have the general shape down, you really gotta, at least me, I gotta iterate on that hump a lot. Adding a little nose shadow. I'm always internally in my head like, man, I gotta make sure this doesn't look like the Adolf stash. It always looks a little bit like the Adolf stash, but I try my best to convey it as a shadow. I realized that the brow needed a bit to work on too. This was a little frustrating. This was frustrating, trying to get this to where I was like, yeah, this looks not garbage. And yeah, you'll notice throughout a lot of this is a Dragon Ball thing right here. Just adding some lines, some hatching along the edges of the eyes. Just something about it. It's like doing it. Gives it some shadow, some depth, whatever buzzword I want to use. I'm a very fake it to make it kind of guy, not fake it till you make it, fake it to make it kind of guy, where I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna keep picking up all these like random techniques and stuff that looks cool, and that's a slippery slope because you can get to a point where you're really good at rendering and really bad at drawing, which actually secretly means you're bad at drawing. It secretly means you're bad at rendering, rather, because the truth to rendering, the truth to shading, in any form, whether it be hatching or with colors and painting, is you're implying form. To imply form, you need to understand form, and to understand form, you need to dedicate yourself to getting good at solid drawing. You need to dedicate yourself to getting good at those principles. The 12 principles of animation are valuable to illustrators as well, not just animators. Especially solid drawing, especially things like, especially if you want to go for a really wacky, zany cartoon style, like squash and stretch, all of those, they're really important. They're really, really important. Being able to draw in 3D space or imply 3D space is vital. Like I said, you'll notice some things I do that doubling up technique with, and some I do it less, or some I just kind of go for more traditionally thick lines with less gaps. And then sometimes it'll be a mixture between the two. A lot of it's intuition. A lot of it is based off of what I feel is right in the moment. But there's a couple of aspects to using the technique that I am like, yeah, I'm definitely going to do it here. And then it will be more pick and choose from there. The main thing is hair. The biggest thing that you want to use that for is hair. I can't really explain to you why. It's just, hair is airy, hair is floaty, hair lacks thickness. So, hair can be volumetric, and it kind of implies that volumetric, but it's still those gaps between the lines, right? That's the key. If you look at like Wamuu draws his art style, for example, that guy will do this line separation thing a lot, and you'll see it especially when he draws hair, and it gives the hair that feeling of volume while not giving it too much thickness to where it feels really weighty and heavy, like some of the thick lines on the scarf, right? Like the scarf is meant to be way more heavy. But hair, it's airy, it's floaty, and so with Amy's quills, you can notice very specifically that the quills have far more of this. Fur as well. Like if you're drawing a furry character, right? Just fur in general, fur, hair, anything of the sort. You want to kind of do that with. I was very happy with this. I gotta tell you, I made it look easy here. I usually have to iterate quite a lot to get a round shape like this to look the way I want it to. Right here I got pretty lucky though. Not much to say here. Just thinking about how stupid of a choice this was. I don't know why I did that. I guess I wanted to draw the ring. I wanted to draw it. Very epic hand image. Not much to say here. Very Sonic-y hands. You just gotta know how to draw Sonic hands. Like, you just gotta like look at Sonic hands for 5 million years and then you can draw Sonic hands. Rule of thumb with hands, always have the index finger be a bit higher up than the others. Make stuff look nice. You know, I'm looking at this hand now and I'm like, I think it looked its best right at this moment. I did go on to iterate on it later on in the video, or later on in the drawing, and this was a mistake I made. I squared it off too hard, I flattened it too hard. That's going to be changed eventually. Nailed this too. Donut. Real good donut. Unfortunately, the amount of feedback I can give on like drawing fabric and fabric folds and stuff is limited. Because it's a level of intuition I haven't really internalized or analyzed fully to understand what kind of makes this stuff tick. I do kind of bullshit it, basically, but I have built enough of an eye for it to where when I bullshit it, it looks fine. Like, it works. Honestly, all things considered, I think I didn't bullshit it as well here as I have with other things in the past. Yeah, when I started adding that shadow, I was like, oh wait, yeah, that's not right. Yeah, brought it down way more. Adding more thickness to the coat. My discipline deals entirely in appealing lines and making this line have the exact right kind of thickness in all the right spots. And the general rule of thumb you want to take into account is this line approaching a destination? And if so, when it reaches its destination, it needs to be generally, for the most part, at its thickest. And you want the line it's connecting to also be at its thickest, and then make it a bit thinner when it's on its way to its destination, if that makes sense. You don't want a line to taper off at its destination. It looks really strange that way. It looks like the line is going to break. It looks like the line's going to fall apart. It looks like a poorly made bridge in Polybridge or something. You want that bridge between the two lines to have proper support, so therefore the line should have a certain level of thickness to it. A good rule of hand as well, and you may have noticed it when I was drawing her ears, is draw over, right? Or rather specifically, not when I was drawing her ears, but when I was drawing the quills and the headband leaning in. Draw through the ears, so that there's two reasons. One, so when you meet the line again on the other side, it's lined up properly. And two, to ensure that you're not accidentally making that line taper off in a weird way. Because let's say that ear was gone. The line should be consistent with what the other side is like. So therefore, it shouldn't oddly taper off on each end. It should be more or less the same thickness. Maybe a little bit different depending on how you're stylizing the lines, but generally having them taper off in that way just doesn't look very appealing. So, draw over, and then erase. You may find you'll create some pretty satisfying contours and line shapes and thicknesses that way. There's a rule you've probably heard before, especially if you pay attention to Western cartoons and stuff. Western-styled cartoons, I'll say, is thick on the outside, thin on the inside. This is something I follow. However, I don't follow it in a very regimented black and white way. Some things, even if they're on the inside, in my style, will be thicker because of a couple of things. If they're in the foreground, if they are meant to be particularly heavy articles, heavy objects within the piece, if I want to emphasize the shape in particular, just because I really like how the shape looks and stuff like that. It's not always super calculated. Sometimes sometimes it is a feel thing where I'm just like, I really like this shape I drew. I'm really going to emphasize it. If I want something to feel really strong, kind of a similar point to the weight thing, but I'm thinking about the 3D space more than anything, is if something's in the foreground, if something's in the background, right? If I want something to feel firm or weighty, those are kind of the things I look towards when I decide line weight. But surely you will definitely notice that most of my lines on the outside will be thicker than the ones on the inside. The big example otherwise is probably Amy's head. I probably will, when I come back to this later to color it. Before I do so, I will iterate on the line slightly. I thought about doing this, and I was like, no. Yeah, at this point, I'm just iterating, adding some extra little details. Eyelashes and the like. Thought it would look nice for her to have some extra lashes, and I was right, it worked out. Biggest thing you'll notice kind of as a result of me drawing this front-facing look, and not mirroring anything, is you'll notice that the left eye is elevated higher than the right. Oh, that's the end of the recording, actually. There's a couple of things that I drew after the fact that I did not record. When I was done with recording, I ended up coming back to it a bit and adding a couple of extra things. And you'll see those extra things in the full image that I left at the start. So, yeah, that's it. I will be coloring this and doing another video where I commentate on that, because my colors, people tell me, are quite unique. So, we will be doing that. Thank you for watching, I guess. I hope this was insightful or interesting. I probably could have kept going for a bit longer, but always keep them wanting more, as they say. So, goodbye. See you next time.